cultural burden of being a young boy and the locker room talk, the locker room banter. So how could I best put this? Speaking in derogatory terms about women, about other people of different gender, different race, different class, basically poking fun at people and using that as a way to connect as a group, okay? And so you're cracking jokes at other people's expense, basically. I would say it's a cultural burden. And I notice in a group that when it happens, I get pulled into it, that orbit. There's a part of me that feels really comfortable with that. I assume when I was younger, I was a leader in that respect of taking the mickey out of people and cracking jokes at other people's expense, even when it was happening to me as well.
What if the way you speak to yourself is quietly shaping not just your own nervous system, but the entire energy of every group you're a part of? Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. My name is Davy. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I'm someone who lives a self-led life, alcohol-free as fuck, and I spend every waking moment of that life helping other people do the same, like right now. Today's daily podcast is a continuance of our Coach's Corner, where I share with you a story from my coaching relationships with people who hire me to help them to become alcohol-free as fuck and live a self-led life. And those of my clients who do not hire me to be alcohol-free as fuck, but they hire me to live a self-led life. I'm not just a one-trick pony. And actually, the client that I'm going to talk about today, he doesn't drink alcohol. So he came to me to work on nervous system management and being in integrity more often, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So as a entrepreneur and a freelancer, I'm really fortunate that I get to travel all over the world, working with different groups of people from different cultures, from different backgrounds, but they all have the same universal truth, right? And that is when they get triggered, their parts take the wheel, all right? So in one group that I work with on a project, there's a group of 5 of us. And I would say out of the 5, 3 of us throughout our lifetimes have naturally gravitated to the role of leader, the alpha male, right? The quote unquote alpha male. And when you get 3 people who usually like to lead in this alpha male kind of role, you kind of can easily get a clash of egos, right? Where each of you is being triggered by the other one because you are parts perceiving that the other one is trying to play the status game with you, right? And trying to I know more than you. I'm better than you, right? But usually what happens is your parts are really nervous because you think they're better than you. You think that they are smarter than you, better looking than you, richer than you, wealthier than you, more talented than you, right? So what's happening is you could easily get this clash of egos coming up because you're always in this work environment where you're all in parts, right? And what I noticed that if one of us was in a bad mood, so if one of us brought something else into the group, a residual energy from a fight with our loved ones, or another business that we were working in was not going well, or we stubbed our toe coming in the front door. What I noticed is that mood that one individual would bring into the group of 5 would actually reverberate through our co-regulated nervous system, because we're actually together for sometimes up to 3 weeks working together. Our nervous system kind of co-regulates, right? So that was one thing that I noticed in this group. The other thing that I noticed in this group, oh, by the way, when someone is in a bad mood and we have a co-regulated nervous system, everybody else in the group is on edge, right? Because the inner children perceive this person in a bad mood to be the parent, either the mother or the father, whoever was in a bad mood when you were a kid. And there's an unpredictability that comes up into the air, the atmosphere, and you're waiting to be told off. You're waiting for something to go wrong, right? There's also, I found in a group, what I would call a legacy burden. So in IFS, There are often burdens that are not, they don't like belong to you. You don't feel like they belong to you. They don't feel like it's a personal thing. It's more kind of like a legacy or a cultural thing that you're experiencing. So one cultural, let's say that it's probably a cultural burden actually. It's the cultural burden of being a young boy and the locker room talk, the locker room banter. So how could I best put this? Speaking in derogatory terms about women, about other people of different gender, different race, different class, um, basically poking fun at people and using that as a way to connect as a group. Okay. And so you're cracking jokes at other people's expense, basically. I would say it's a cultural burden. And I notice in a group that when that happens, I get pulled into it, that orbit. There's a part of me that feels really comfortable with that. I assume when I was younger, I was a leader in that respect of taking the Mickey out of people and cracking jokes at other people's expense, even when it was happening to me as well. So I would feel the group going into it, and then I would feel shame afterwards or guilt, knowing that I had slipped out of integrity. And when one of the members of this group became my client, he confided in me that he felt the same, that he would get dragged into it, but he didn't really want to be in it, right? He was like just pulled into it. And then the other thing that came up in the group is one person having a very, very punitive self-talk. So whenever a mistake was made, let's call this person Frank, he would be like, for fuck's sake, Frank, you're a fucking idiot. Let's go again. Right. And when I spoke to him about it, he thought it was normal. Just, oh, yeah, that's just who I am. Right. Like it's just harmless. But then working with him, you realize that actually that was a part that came up, a protector part, because when he was younger, actually, he was criticized by his caregivers when he made a mistake. And the feelings of shame and embarrassment and humiliation of being spoken to like that, he couldn't let them come to the surface. He couldn't experience them. So this part would come in and say, you're a fucking idiot, right? He would like calm those things down. So that would happen. And of course, when someone's having that punitive self-talk, that in itself is also impacting the co-regulated nervous system, because now we're all really uncomfortable because this guy is like picking on himself, right? So these are the things that when I started to work with him as a client, we needed to confront, we needed to talk about, and we needed to get on top of. I'm going to tell you how we did that after the break. But before we have a break, let me ask you this. When you mess up, do you talk to yourself like someone you love or someone you despise? Think about that while we have a break, okay? If you're hearing this and realizing your inner dialogue is often cruel, that's a sign that your nervous system is crying out for safety. Strive Foundations was built for this exact work. It helps you spot when you're below the line, reconnect with self, and rewire those critical voices into compassionate ones. If you're ready to experience peace in your own body and radiate it to others, Strive Foundations is where you start. www.thestrivemethod.com/foundations. I hope to see you in there. Welcome back to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. Before the break, I told you about one of my clients whose self-talk was keeping him a lot below the line. This co-regulated nervous system where these alpha males were all getting triggered, and their locker room humor, what I call a cultural burden, that we were all kind of getting involved in this kind of like back and forth, going out of integrity, talking shit about people, basically. So this is what shifted for him in the work with me, and then how it impacted the group. And the first thing I would say, I gave him the framework of the line. And you would have heard me talk about this a lot here. And this comes from the Conscious Leadership Group. And this is a simple line, horizontal line. And at any point in the day, you're either above the line, and if you are, you're in self-energy, and you have access to that beautiful seat of consciousness of yours, right? Love. And then if you're not above the line, you're below the line. And if you're below the line, you're in victim consciousness. And this is where your parts are activated, your inner child parts. Okay. So I helped him to set alarms on his phone throughout the day where he would check in with himself and say, am I above the line or am I below the line? Right. And then if he is below the line, then he has to take certain actions, use certain tools and techniques to get himself above the line. Right. And the more he does that and the better he does that, the less likely being below the line is going to impact other people. Number two, we worked on the criticism. So he started to recognize it, not just this is who I am, but actually this is who I am. And I need to do something about this because it's not healthy. Right? It's not healthy because the way your internal world mirrors your external world. So if you're speaking to yourself like that, you are going to be speaking to other people like that as well. So instead of pushing it away and not dealing with it, he got curious about it. Where does this voice come from? Whose voice was it really? And that's when we made a really breakthrough where we realized where the voice was coming from. It came from a burden from childhood when his caregivers were speaking to him in this way. And we was able to deal with these parts. We're still working on these parts today. But it allowed the parts that were giving him some critical self-talk to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel like they mattered. And all of a sudden, they started to calm down a little bit. And when we're in a work environment, he's able to go into self and say to his parts, right, we're going into work today. Is it okay if I got this? And when he's got it, it's cool. Now, there are times when he will reach like an anxious state. But in those moments, what he's really doing well is he'll step out the room. He'll step out and he'll take care of himself. And then he'll come back in, right? Number three, he started to treat those parts with compassion, like I said. Instead of piling more shame on them, he was taking breaks, breathing, stepping into the sunshine, and slowly over time, the punitive voices softened. And recently I was working with him on location and I didn't hear the voice come out at all. I didn't. And then what I did is I gave him that feedback. I gave him that feedback that, hey, you're talking to yourself really beautifully, even though the pressure's on, and it's having a really positive impact throughout the team. And I think that feedback is really important. And the ripple effect here, when he stopped criticizing himself, is really, really important because his whole energy shifted. And while he's not criticizing himself, people in the group don't have to feel uncomfortable because suddenly he's really calm, right? The other thing I noticed with his energy is when other people dipped into childish humor, these culture burdens I was talking about, rather than say, hey, I don't want to have this behavior anymore, he would say in a really calm but firm way, hey, come on, let's not go there. Or come on, that's enough of that. And because he was saying it from a really beautiful kind of energy and he wasn't too stern, the people in the group would get in the hint slowly, right? Not with judgment, but just like a playful way. And as a result, the humor is much, much less. It happens, right? But it's much, much less than it used to be because of this one guy. And what he's done, he has dealt with himself. He's worked on himself. There was a time when a part of him was like, I wish him, and him all changed. I wish I wasn't here. I wish this all changed. So, because this is impacting me. I don't want to work here anymore. And he was he's playing the outside game. But now he's playing the inside out game. He's like, I'm going to change the way I respond to everybody in the group. And as a result of that, he has changed everything. His healing presence has healed the room. He's turned a co-regulated sympathetic nervous system right on the edge of our window of tolerance, tense experience into a beautiful, calm, safe environment where we've actually, most recently, done the best work together as a group than we ever have. And it's all because this one guy actually changed the way that he was responding to life. And this is exactly what happens in our relationships too, and why I'm talking about it on the podcast. In my marriage, for example, I used to think the solution was that Liza needed to change her energy when she was in her masculine because it would trigger my inner child and I would feel uncomfortable, right? This happens when she was stressed. So my inner child would be bracing for attack, like when you were younger and your parents were stressed and they would take it out on you, right? So I would blame her for that and I would push her to be different. But the real work was my own nervous system management, recognizing that in a relationship, there are times when your partner, people you love, are going to be triggered, and you need to be able to hold yourself in that storm. They need you to, by taking radical responsibility, calm in your own parts, and choosing to stay in self. And when I did that, our home became safer for both of us. So again, it's the inside out, not the outside in way of healing. So if you are in social groups where people are drinking alcohol, talking shit, gossiping, going below the line, if you are in work environments where the same kind of happens, listen to this back again. There's a lot, you have a lot more in control than you think of. And you don't just have to leave, right? Obviously, you have a choice, right? Like, I don't want to work here anymore. Or like, I used to think the railway was super toxic. And one of the reasons I left the railway after 15 years is because it was toxic. I don't want to work in a toxic environment. I would be really interested to see what impact I could have had as a more conscious Lee, understanding everything I do today about IFS and about the line and about self-energy, parts energy, nervous system management. What would have happened if I would have brought that into the toxic environment? Could I have changed people? Could I have helped co-regulate that system which was toxic? So you have a choice. You could just leave, or sometimes you can't. And then you have to work on yourself. Okay? I hope that helped. Today's daily vow. I will speak to myself with compassion because the way I treat myself shapes the way I treat the world. Heal your nervous system and you heal the room. Now, here's the thing. Your nervous system might want to keep scrolling, skip to the next steps, but part of managing your energy is choosing deliberately. So please do that today. Deliberately choose to rate and review this show because your feedback really helps regulate the community's nervous system into something stronger and more safer. And please subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's episode. And tell somebody about this. If you know somebody who is really struggling in work or they confided in you that the relationships is really struggling, it will be a nervous system thing. So share this to them. It could really help them. Okay, you ready to take today's sovereign vow? One hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Repeat after me. I am a striver who is alcohol-free as fuck. And I will not drink alcohol today because that is not what I do and that is not who I am. Until tomorrow, much love and strive on, everybody.